So Disney Plus finally revealed its launch titles, and let's talk a little bit about the ending of Lord of the Rings. Welcome to the newest episode of SDW.
Super Dario World!
It's a me,
Dario!
Woohoo! Let's go!
Alright, so as you guys know, I've been pretty critical about Disney lately, but I am very excited about the new Disney Plus, streaming service that they're going to have, mainly because it's going to have all the old movies. I'm not so sure about the new stuff, but I am very excited about the old stuff. So it launches November 12th, which means that it's less than a month away. It's going to cost about, $6.99 monthly or $70 for the year one, which is not a bad deal for all the Disney movies. Anybody who has kids should definitely take this. But it's going to be more than just movies. So they just released a list of all the stuff, and they actually released it by year. So starting with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs all the way back in 1937 to, at the end of the list, you got The Mandalorian in 2019. They revealed everything. And wow. So there's some of the things here that I just did not expect. I did not know that Disney owns everything right now. And so there's a lot of things that just kind of surprised me. Like, some are not weird. Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Alice in Wonderland, Treasure Island, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea, that 1954 one. 101 Dalmatians, Sword of the Stone, Incredible Journey, Blackbeard's Ghost, The Aristocats, Strongest Man in the World, Pete's Dragon, the 1977 one. Star Wars Return of all the Star Wars ones. Tron. I didn't know they owned Tron. I guess I should have. Return to Oz. I'm just basically randomly starting. Oliver and Company. X-Men, the series. They now own Fox, so they have all the X-Men animated series there. Boy Meets World. Lion King, all that stuff. So it looks pretty good, man. Honestly, there's hundreds. I know it's easily more than 100 titles here. Might be even more. So, yeah, I'm excited for this one. I already pre-ordered it because just on the old movies alone, you will get all the bang for your buck. So, honestly, good on you, Disney. I have no idea how you're gonna make money out of this in the long run, but that's pretty sick. Honestly, I'm pretty excited for all this, especially for the Mandalorian. I really want to see that one. It looks pretty good. Anyway, so that's it. That's the only thing I wanted to mention. You can check out the list online. You can find it anywhere. Just type in Disney Plus launch titles. You'll find it anywhere. Speaking of, before I forget, let me just give you a quick reminder. You can listen to the podcast in the iHeartRadio app. Just type in The Show Presents Super Dario World, or you can find it on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube as Super Dario World Podcast. The YouTube one usually takes me a little bit longer to load because I have to edit it out, and exporting it is a bitch. But I've been doing every single episode. I've been doing a video version of it if you want to check it out there. So, all right, I think that's it. I got it. Oh no, not everything. Any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can find me at Dario the Show on Instagram. I always respond, even though it might take me a few days / week because I am backed up on stuff. And sometimes I just don't feel like talking. But I will always respond. That's a guarantee. At least right now. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Lord of the Rings. And I just want to put a little bit of ambient music here, background. Not too much, just to get us into the vibe. So, over the past few weeks, I've been I rewatched the extended versions of The Lord of the Rings because I do that every few years, and I felt like doing it, and it was time. So, actually, it's been more than a few years. I hadn't, for those of you who don't know, I went to film school, and I had not seen them again in the extended version since I went to film school. So it was very different watching them this time. I got to see them with a more, let's say, experienced eye, slightly more educated eye, right? And also with more knowledge of the production itself. The Hobbit movies already come out, and you learn a little bit of fun facts here and there about the performances, about the characters, about the things on set, the dramas, the every single thing that went down, which is great. I love learning about that stuff. I love knowing it and seeing it again. It brings out something in you. Now, I need to get this out of the way, and I mentioned it a few weeks ago. My favorite one has always been The Fellowship of the Ring. I know that the best one is Return of the King, and watching Return of the King again, it's like, yes, hands down, that's the best one. But my personal favorite is Fellowship of the Ring. And for various reasons, most of them it's just that I really like the character of Boromir. I like how, well, the two hardest parts of any story is how you begin it and how you end it. And I feel that the beginning was, the opening sequence where this soundtrack is, where the armies are invading Mordor, fighting for the ring and all that stuff, and how they tell you that story, then presenting of the Shire, presenting of the characters, was slightly stronger than the ending. Because, well, there were many endings, and that's what I wanted to talk about, the ending of The Lord of the Rings. Now, if you've never read the books, then the only ending you know is the ones from the movies. But in actuality, the ending from the books is very, very, well, not very different, but it's different from the one from the movies. Overall, the movie's fairly faithful to the books, except in two things. One, it omits a character named Tom Bombadillo, which I won't get into. He's a mystery. And the other thing is the ending. So if you're ever planning on reading the books, I suggest you stop listening right now, because I'm about to spoil the real ending of the books. So you get 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, spoiler city. Now, there's the real ending of the books. What happens is, after the Ring of Power is destroyed, the hobbits, they return to the Shire, and they find that it has been conquered and taken over by Saruman. And so he's basically enslaved the hobbits. Now, if you guys remember, back in Fellowship of the Ring, Lady Galadriel, he makes Frodo look into a mirror, and there Frodo has a vision of basically the Shire in fire, his friends in chains, and all that stuff. And Lady Galadriel basically says that this is the future that will come to happen if you fail. In the movie, that is correct. He didn't fail. That future did not come to happen. In the books, that future still happens. Everybody getting imprisoned, his friends in chains, all that stuff. So, when the hobbits go back to the Shire, it's not this Eden that they remembered. It's not the place that was all peaceful and nice and everything. It was actually burnt. It was destroyed. And so this innocent, innocent, harmless place was destroyed. And it's up to the returning hobbits to try to win it back, pretty much. And they start a rebellion, and a whole bunch of stuff happens. And then that's when things lead to Frodo leaving on the ship to the west. That's kind of how it goes. I did not go to... Well, Frodo really doesn't do much at the end because he's still tired from the ring. It's mostly Sam who takes charge. And so if you think about it, there's at the ending of the movie, when Frodo gives the book to Sam and he says the last pages are for you, it's slightly more symbolic. In the movie, it's more of a, well, you'll live happily ever after. Here, it's you need to step up. So actually, Sam actually becomes the mayor of the Shire. So he steps up. He's no longer the gardener. He becomes the mayor, a leader of men. Anyway, so there's a lot of critique that's been made about the Lord of the Rings story in general. There's two big critiques. Well, first off, it has to be said, it is the most important fantasy work of all time. It's probably the biggest, the most influential. Was it the first one? In that genre, yes. And so I think it was. Don't quote me on that. I don't know what the hell mythology counts, if it just counts as mythology or fantasy. Point is, in its genre, it is the most important one because it was the first. Everybody and their mother has been inspired by Lord of the Rings, or at least even indirectly. Sometimes people don't know, but they've been inspired by it. So So the two things that have been critiqued about the story throughout the years is the return of Gandalf. A lot of people have issues with, especially realistic fantasy writers. They're like, why couldn't you just leave him? Actually, George R. R. Martin, who wrote the Song of Ice and Fire books, Game of Thrones, he's always said that why did Gandalf return? It was the one thing that always irked him, the return of Gandalf. He should have just stayed dead. And in a way, I've always argued that then that Gandalf the Grey did die. The one that came back is not Gandalf the Grey. It's Gandalf the White. It's a different entity. The problem is that imagine that Gandalf is kind of a demigod or the equivalent of an angel. So is it just the essence that returned upgraded? It was sent by a higher power. It's hard to tell. It's the world is not crystal clear. Lord of the Rings is not crystal clear on everything. It leaves a lot to interpretation. In the world of Middle-earth in general, which is part of its genius. It lets you put in your own imagination into it. It's not as crazy as A Song of Ice and Fire that you can start having a whole bunch of conspiracy theories on it. But this one, it does leave a little bit of room for interpretation. Now, that's one. The death of Gandalf. 2 is the ending. And a lot of people don't understand why. I mean, you're reading this book. These characters are suffering through the most horrible of ordeals. They finally make it. They destroy the ultimate evil. And then when they're finally going home for their happy ending, they find more horrors, more death. And for the people that are closest to them. And it doesn't really make sense in certain contexts, but if you know the author's life, that's J.R.R. Tolkien, if you know his life, it kind of makes perfect sense. Now, for those of you who don't know Tolkien, he's a British dude, and he went to fight in the First World War. So the thing that he was always trying to convey with that ending is that you can never really go back home. There's no going back home after the horrors of war. Also, that war spreads everywhere. Evil is not one force in one spot. It's spread out everywhere. And so there's a lot of things that he wanted to say. And there's a lot of parallels between his life and the characters. For example, when Tolkien was young, before he enlisted in the army, he kind of avoided enlisting, and he kind of was judged by his family very strongly at that point because they seemed... But back then, if you were a young man, you enlisted because it's the Great War. You have to go and defend your country. He waited a little bit, and because he wanted to get his degree, and then he went it as an officer. Now, as an officer, he learned that he did not want to be a leader of men, or that it was a duty. It was a big responsibility on him. And there's actually a quote from him, and I'll read it to you. "Not one in a million is fit for it, and least of all those who seek the opportunity." So, there's a very strong parallel there between Aragorn and Tolkien, the not wanting to be leaders but being thrust upon a certain position, stuff like that, and still wanting to avoid it and not thinking yourself worthy of it. There's also a very interesting parallel that when he was in France, he got sick, and so trench fever, which is something you get from lice, apparently. And so he got sent back to England, and for the last few years of the war, he still kept getting sick. So he kind of could do something and then was sick again. He could do stuff and then he could be sick again. And if you think about it, the ending that I just told you, Frodo doesn't do much because he's exhausted from the trials from having carried the ring for so long. That's kind of how he felt throughout the end of the war. It's like, I want to do something, but I can't. My body won't let me. So there's a lot of parallels there. And this is my theory, just going into the Gandalf thing of why Gandalf the Grey why Gandalf the White came back. It's the guy lost a buttload of his friends. In fact, I think he said, let me see, I got the number here, but all but one of his close friends died by 1918. All but one. And I don't really know what happened to the other guy. And when he got taken back to England, his battalion got almost decimated. Most of his best friends from school, from everywhere, they were dead. And so if you're creating characters, when you're writing a character, you kind of start feeling some, like a friendship toward you. You start, especially if you like the character, you feel certain emotions towards them. It's really weird. And, well, it's actually not that weird. I think people can relate to that. I mean, a lot of people have imaginary friends. And so it's hard for you to let one of them go, if that makes any sense. And so that's why Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, they all make it, because he could not find, or in the Hobbits, that's where they make it. It's because he could not let them go. He already lost too many friends in his life, in the horrors of war, and so he could not let his fictional friends die in the books. At least that's my theory. I could be wrong. In fact, I don't know. I've never been that guy. But yeah. So the ending is, I think for the movie it works. It works because otherwise it would have been way too long. I would have loved to have seen it, but it also makes it a slightly cleaner, slightly happier ending, and it's fine. The books and the movie are similar yet very different. One is kind of a little bit more hopeful. The movies are slightly more lighthearted, even though it still has, the whole horrors of war thing. But the books are way, way darker, and you could tell how much this guy, the things that he saw and how it affected him, how war really affected him, and how in many ways it's kind of an anti-war book, because you are like, damn, this is how much can a man can take, and that's actually the big question with Frodo and the ring. How much can one small hobbit take? One small, pure, innocent creature. How much evil can one person take before he is broken? It's a great story, man. And every single time I see it, I find new things, and I think it gets better and better. Maybe I'm just romanticizing it in my own head. I don't know. But it was great. I'm happy that I saw it once again. And I just wanted to share those thoughts. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Maybe you have other thoughts. Let me know. There was something else that I wanted to get into, but I'm kind of blanking out. The whole never being able to return home thing. For those of you who don't know, there's kind of this thing about that. Before I get into that, there's actually a scene where Peter Jackson kind of alludes to this, in that it's his way of kind of recognizing the ending, but at the same time, not so much. While still avoiding it. If you guys remember, at the end of the Return of the King, the hobbits, when they come back to the Shire and everything's great, they are sitting. Frodo gets some beers, and they are sitting in the table together quietly, and nobody really knows what to say. They're just sitting there, and then Sam takes charge and he goes after Rosie, and that's pretty much it. And that's Peter Jackson saying of like, they don't fit in here anymore. The characters, they came back and they're different people. You left as children, they came back as adults, and they don't fit in anymore. So there's a thing that happens for a lot of people that goes to when they go off to college, and there's a reason why the friendships that usually last the longest throughout life, and this is pretty much consistent with most people. The friendships that last the longest are the people you had in college, or the friends you meet in college. Because you're kind of together in this own little, its own unique social ecosystem. It's really weird, but you're all in it together, and it's weird, and you follow your own rules. You don't really follow the same rules as society. It's an interesting thing, and so once you've been through that and you go back home, even though a high school friend who went to college just somewhere else, and probably had very similar experiences, you come back and you find you don't mesh anymore because you grew apart. Now, imagine that, but going through war. You, instead of going to college and having fun and getting crazy, you went to war. You had to kill people. Most of your friends died. There's a point where you just can't express it in a way. And so I think that was Tolkien's way of expressing it. The Eden has been burned. Every single thing that I knew was burned. The past is burned, and you can rebuild. And evil is a constant thing in Middle Earth and Earth in general, and it's up to you to stand up. At the end, you can't just be like, all right, well, this is done. It's over. It's a happily ever after. No. There's no real happily ever after in life. There's always something else. And if you think about it, after World War I, a lot of people think that the Lord of the Rings books have a lot of influence in World War II and Hitler and all that stuff. There's parallels. And it's really funny when reality catches up to fiction. And I do think that there was, even though Tolkien said it doesn't, there had to be some kind of adaptation in his own head, maybe subconsciously, that kind of led into a little bit more into WW2 and all that stuff. But it's right there, plain as day. Evil's still there, and even though you took care of it there and you thought you'd won, it came back. It's still there. You always have to be vigilant. You can never you can never really let your guard down in a way, or you can never be not ready to step up. And actually for WW2, he enlisted as a translator and all that stuff, and because the dude had made up a whole bunch of languages by that point. So it's very interesting. Honestly, the dude's life is very interesting. I haven't seen his movie. There's a movie called Tolkien. I haven't seen it yet. I want to. It's like I want to and I don't, because I already know a lot about his life, and so I'm not sure if the movie will compare to what I already have in my head. I don't know. Also, I didn't really hear great things about it, but I don't know. Point is, hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you found that interesting. Let me cut this music off here a little bit. And yeah, hopefully you found it interesting. Hopefully it makes your experience of Lord of the Rings a little bit better, you know? I mean, or a little bit more interesting. I could go into fun facts. I think I already went to fun facts the last time about Aragorn, how he broke his foot, and how Viggo Mortensen is a psycho. So, I know, I'll leave you with a tidbit, because the person that I watched it with, I told her to watch the exact same thing. And there's a video on YouTube that is the final scene of Elijah Wood. And I think it's like a 5-minute video. I recommend that you watch it. It's heartbreaking. Peter Jackson does not want to stop rolling. He does not. It's really hard to let go sometimes. And I don't know. I like watching that video. I saw it in the DVD extras the first time, and it gets to you. It's hard. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. As always, any comments, questions, or suggestions, you can find me at Dario the Show on Instagram. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.